This is where we watch the Trivoli pulsar.
They always tell you not to get too attached to your ship. But how could you not?
Hey, can I tell you something?
Yeah?
I am attached to the ship. I love the Cerritos. I have for a long time now, and no one can tell me otherwise.
I love the Cerritos too.
Set a course for love.
Ah, yes. One of your Earth emotions.
Glad I found you.
Let's get married.
Delete the wife.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Deep Space Love, the Star Trek podcast where a married Trekkie couple explore love in all its forms throughout the final frontier. I'm Nicole, one of your hosts.
I'm Joe, one of the other hosts.
Hi, Joe. How are you doing?
Doing well. How are you?
Great. Friday fun day.
Friday fun day. Yeah. I feel like I said that when I was younger at one point, but now it's like Friday, like exhaustion day. It's like the end of the week. I'm just like, I'm done.
Oh, well, I mean, I hope you're not too exhausted because we have an episode to do tonight and...
Never too exhausted for Star Trek.
Never too exhausted for Star Trek. And we have with us a very special guest. Did you know that?
I'm aware. Thank you.
I know. I'm just joking. For everyone listening tonight or today, whenever you're listening, we have with us Dr. Michael Wong. He's an astrobiologist, planetary scientist, and photographer. His podcast, Strange New Worlds, explores science, technology, and culture through the lens of Star Trek. Welcome, Michael. Michael or Mike?
Hi. Oh, most people call me Mike. So
Okay.
Yeah, we can go with that if you like.
Welcome.
It's such a pleasure to be here. Thank you. I'm really excited and I love this show. So
Thank you.
happy to chat.
That's so nice. Thank you so much for listening and thanks for joining us and taking the time. We're like a little bit slightly different time zones, so it's later for you. So appreciate you staying up late.
Oh, no problem. I'll stay up as late as you want to talk about Star Trek.
Like we said, never too exhausted.
Exactly. It's like caffeine sometimes.
Well, so let's get into your background with Trek then. Our first guest question that we typically have with new guests on the podcast is, why do you love Trek?
Wow, that's such a how long do you have?
I know it's either really easy or really hard, or
Yeah. So I feel like I grew up with Star Trek. My dad introduced it to me when I was very young. He was a fan of the original series, and growing up in the '90s, I sort of caught the tail end of TNG and then watched, Deep Space Nine and Voyager, and was sort of immersed in that triad of TNG, Deep Space Nine, and Voyager. And so I barely remember a time before Star Trek was in my life, and it's just followed me as a passion throughout my life. So I feel like answering the question, why do I love Star Trek? It has many different answers because at different stages of my life, I loved it for different reasons.
yes.
So when I was a really little kid, like, kindergarten, elementary school, I feel like I was just in love with the idea of exploring space and like how cool of like I feel like every little kid has like an astronaut phase, right? And so Star Trek definitely kicked that off for me. And the episode that I first watched was the TNG episode Masks, which I don't know if you remember that one. Data sort of gets inhabited by some strange intelligence and then begins acting in all sorts of different ways. And I was just so enthralled by Brent Spiner's acting. I was just like, what is this? Who is this person with this like shiny metallic skin and yellow eyes, like acting all weird? I didn't really know anything about what the show was about. And so I asked my dad, what is this? And he was like, it's Star Trek. And then explained the concept to me. And I just thought it was the coolest thing. And then as I grew a little bit older, I felt like, okay, this is really cool. I love the space battles and like the phasers. And when the Romulan warbird decloaks off the port bow, it was exciting, right? So I was like enthralled by that. Then as I matured a little bit more, I started to recognize that like, oh, space exploration is actually a career that you could have. Like, and I started to look up to the Star Trek characters as my own personal like heroes or idols, or like, these are people that I want to emulate when I grow up and explore space too, if I can. And then as I continued to, chase that dream and, mature as a person, I started to recognize that Star Trek has all sorts of just fantastic stories and philosophical concepts and conundrums that they have to tackle. And I just sort of grew into loving that aspect of Star Trek as well. And now that I'm actually a space scientist. I love Star Trek because it continues to fuel my passion, and I love giving back to the nerd community through speaking at Comic Cons or Star Trek conventions or doing my podcast. And I can express my love for Star Trek in yet more ways and dimensions.
That was amazing. I feel like actually you're the first guest that we've had on that has explained it so like through all the different stages. And so I love getting all these like different takes on that question. And yours is really amazing. I feel like we had a similar, like our dads also introduced us to Trek. So it's like, it's a cool like origin story.
Yeah.
This also, let's see. The next question is, I word it different ways. So it's either your home base crew or show, or if you want, you could interpret it like if you could like work with one of the crews. Maybe those are different answers, but sort of like kind of where's your home base, I guess.
Yeah. Oh, this is such a fun question too. So like I said, I grew up in the 90s, right? So Deep Space Nine, Voyager, TNG. When I imagine myself in Star Trek, I imagine myself in that era of Star Trek. I definitely think my home crew is Voyager. That's sort of the series that I really just grew up and religiously watched when I was a kid. I like to say I grew up in the Delta Quadrant on Voyager. And, I feel like I remember like my childhood best friend's mom telling me one day that like, Mike, when you speak, you sound like you're in Star Trek. Specifically, you sound like I know. It was such a compliment. I was like, oh, yes, I can be a Starfleet officer. And then another really touching moment for me was, so I'm in a long distance relationship. When my partner moved to Chicago to pursue her PhD, she ended up watching Voyager from like start to finish. And she wasn't really a Star Trek fan very much, but then she watched Voyager when she went to Chicago, and I was like, wow, what's going on there? And she was like, I watched Voyager because it makes me feel like I'm with you. It's like I'm like, that's so sweet. That was like the sweetest thing anybody's ever said or done for me. So I do feel like Voyager is my home base, I guess, and people and I radiate that perhaps, and people notice.
Wow, I love that. Amazing. Okay. Final question is another kind of self-interpretation. So we have, if you could go on a date with a character, who would it be? Which I'm sure is also a very hard question. And you could take it the word date however you want to. Like it could be like grabbing a beer or like having a coffee date, or it could be a romantic aspect to it if you want. So you can interpret it how you wish. But I guess just sort of if we kind of like we're doing home base crew, and now just like looking through like one particular character, who would that be?
Yeah. So this was the question that I think I struggled with the most in terms of thinking of an answer, because I would just love to hang out with so many Star Trek characters.
Agreed.
The way I'll answer it today is that I would love to go on just like a coffee date with Data. And the reason for that, like I said, he was the first character that I was like really glued into. I was like, whoa, what is happening here? This is such an interesting being. And today our society is sort of going through this transformation with the rise of generative AI, and you hear all of these stories about people having like relationships with chatbots, sometimes with really disastrous consequences. And it's funny to me because I've always wanted to have Data as a friend, like literally an AI friend. And yet today I'm like very hesitant to use generative AI, because I see all of these and I read all these stories about people really going off the deep end with that, and diving into conspiracy theories or even self-harm. And so I wrestle with this, because as a kid I wanted an AI friend, and it's almost like anybody can have an AI friend right now, but that's not a good thing. And I'd love to just sit down with Data and figure out with him, like, so what exactly is the difference between you and ChatGPT? Like, help me process what I'm feeling right now, when we are almost living in the Star Trek age, in terms of like, in Star Trek, people can just like ask the computer anything and the computer will have a response. It's like we're almost there, and yet it feels like we're still so far. And why is that? And I need Data's help to help me unpack that.
Amazing.
Well said. Very well said.
I loved all those answers. Thank you for indulging us in those questions.
Yeah. So yeah, very fascinating. Can you also just tell us like a little bit about your podcast, Strange New Worlds, and just kind of like how that came to be? You're combining your like science job with your love for Star Trek, and like just a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I started this podcast, Strange New Worlds, a science and Star Trek podcast, in 2017. So this was when Star Trek Discovery was coming on the air, and I was listening to a bunch of Star Trek podcasts like one does, and noticing how, people are talking about the characters and the story arc and, the set design and costumes, which were amazing, but nobody was really talking about the science in the show. And Discovery in particular had a lot of interesting science. It begins the battle of the binary stars. So you see these two stars like in formation with their protoplanetary disks full of gas and dust about to form planets. And there was like, the tardigrade and its weird DNA and how you could transform its DNA and inject it into a human. And then they would get the tardigrade's abilities and the mycelial network. And it was just like all of these, they're really pulling from and getting inspired by a lot of real world science, but nobody was talking about that on those podcasts. And I realized one day, hey, wait, if nobody else is going to do this, maybe I should do it. I mean, I'm plugged into the scientific community. I know a bunch of people who actually research these things. What if we nerded out about Star Trek and science, two things that I can never stop talking about? And that's how the podcast got thrown together. It's, just blossomed into a really fun activity for me. Like I said, I really love giving back to the Star Trek community, and it's something where it's gone even beyond just interviewing scientists who are also Star Trek fans like me, to even interviewing some of the folks who have helped create Star Trek. So some of the actors who have portrayed science officers on the show, and also some of the writers and creators.
That's so cool. It's a great show, everyone, and listening, definitely recommended. Well, I will link it in our notes too, so people can find it really easily.
The original Strange New Worlds.
The original Strange New Worlds. Exactly. Oh, gee. I saw that you are co-authoring a book that's due out in 2026 called Time's Arrow, Evolution, Order, and the New Law of Nature. Could you give us a little preview of what that's about?
Oh, wow. Yeah. Okay. So this book is basically based on some research that I've been doing at the Carnegie Institution for Science, where I work, with an amazing team of colleagues that spans all kinds of different scientific disciplines and even philosophy of science. So for the past couple of years, this group of ours has been really trying to wrap our minds around this idea of increasing complexity in the universe. As the Big Bang Theory tells us, the universe started out in a hot, dense state, and then over 14 billion years generated all of these incredible things that we see around us, stars, galaxies, planets that have life and culture and technology. And so we were thinking about, wow, is there some kind of principle or regularity or pattern or description that we can put in a scientific lens for understanding the growth of all of this marvelous complexity around us? And so our team, encompasses people who study geology, folks who study astrobiology like myself, people who are into physics and data science and organic chemistry. And then again, these philosophers of science who really study how science has evolved itself, the history of science, how natural laws have developed, and together over the past, I'd say 3 or 4 years, we've put together a framework for a proposal for a new natural law that we call the law of increasing functional information. That information can be a metric that we can use to characterize the increase of complexity throughout the universe over its 14 billion year history. And so this book is our attempt to explain that concept and its ramifications for everybody in a way that anyone can understand. So, we've published a series of papers on this subject, but papers are read by, a small fraction of humanity. And we think that this is a big enough idea that we'd love to share it with essentially everybody. And my goal with this book was basically, I was telling myself, I want to be able to hand this book off to my parents at Christmas and just have them be able to read it and understand everything that I've been trying to do over the past couple of years as a scientist.
Fascinating.
It's amazing.
Sounds really cool. I also read about how through your work with Carnegie Science, you have a new project funded by NASA. It sounds like a grant-funded project. I saw an announcement. I think you made it on Blue Sky.
That's so cool.
About relatively new. It sounds like it's. I think it sounds like a 5-year grant where you are going to be using or looking into how you use AI tools to help aid in the search for life on other planets. Could you elaborate on that a little bit?
I am so excited for this. So this is a big grant that is co-led by myself here at Carnegie Science and NASA Ames's Dr. Caleb Scharf, and so we're just so excited for this project. It's basically about teaching machine learning algorithms to recognize the patterns of molecules that indicate life and patterns of molecules that indicate not life. And so we live in this age of, again, this enormous corpus of data about our natural world. And also, again, in this age where we're developing artificial intelligence models that can help us interpret the natural world. So I want to be clear here that this is very different from the ChatGPT or data style. We're more trying to develop like a tricorder, right? So relying on more traditional like machine learning algorithms rather than the generative AI that like spits out English essays and on all sorts of other things. So based on this more traditional kind of AI, these machine learning algorithms, you can actually do essentially pattern recognition on tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of molecules all at once. And so you can take a tiny sample of a rock from ancient Earth or from hopefully one day a distant planet and analyze its chemical makeup using very standard chemical techniques, and then feed that data into a machine learning algorithm that's been trained on a corpus of samples from Earth and other planets that helps us interpret whether or not the molecules in that extraterrestrial sample that a rover on Mars, say, has picked up and analyzed actually contains signs of life, either past or present life. And so we think that machine learning can be a really powerful tool in this way, because just in the way that your phone can like use machine learning to essentially open your phone with with facial recognition, we apply the same principles. But instead of facial recognition on facial features, we do just recognition of a multidimensional suite of patterns in molecular data.
Wow.
Yeah, that's so sweet. Congratulations on the grant.
Yeah,
And now the real work
Thank
begins.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So we've just begun work. We've only had one meeting so far as a team. I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled for it.
And I agree. I do feel like I'm like, okay, this is the kind of stuff I want AI to be working on, like the stuff that we can't necessarily, or like that we can teach machines to do that, not necessarily, like you said, like writing essays or like movie scripts, but like let humans do art, I think, for now, right? Until we have it like a data. But yeah, that's so cool. I'm really excited. I feel like if I had not become a forensic scientist, I also wanted to be an astrophysicist probably. So I took a different path.
I did see your eyes light up when you said pattern recognition, though.
I did, yeah. Well, that's because like, it's
vibe.
different patterns, but like, fingerprint patterns is what I've learned to recognize. But anyway, it's just like, I guess it clicks in my brain. Anyway, back to Star Trek.
I suppose, out of the real world and into the fictional, I suppose.
Why are you sad about that?
I mean, that was because it was so interesting. I mean, I'm excited still. Yeah,
Mike's stuff's really interesting.
Yeah, that was great. Thank you for sharing all that stuff. I'm really excited for the book. Really excited for like just hearing, like following all your updates. It's gonna be amazing, I think.
Oh, thanks for asking.
So before we get into like our main topic, I always have a little Trek check segment in which I talk about like news items for Star Trek. The crazy thing about this one is that the last episode we did on this podcast was a non-Star Trek, so I haven't done a Trek check for a while.
Oh, yeah.
So there's a lot of news. I am going to do it a little rapid fire this time instead of stopping for everything.
Sure.
And if either of you by the end of that think of like, "Ooh, I really want to talk about that for a moment," you can bring that up and we could elaborate. But I will just start from where because I start like I just like record notes of like news as I hear them over the last like 2 months. But the big one that from the earliest one I have, the big one was the Paramount Skydance merger that went through. It's very controversial. A lot of people are like, what does this mean for Star Trek? So TBD on that one. They did hire Chris Parnell, former Sony TV and Apple TV executive who claims to be a big Star Trek fan. So we'll see. Not super stoked about a lot of the corporate shenanigans that have gone on there in relation to the government. I won't get into it, but it's kind of disheartening in a lot of ways. That being said, we did get some teasers for Starfleet Academy.
Yeah.
Stoked for that. Strange New World season 4, the puppet episode looked exciting. Stuff from the Roddenberry archive, which is kind of interesting. They made that unification film we talked about a while back. They are starting up with some new documentaries, one on the Shatnerverse of the novels, which I'm kind of really excited to hear that from some of the authors who helped work on that. Michael Sussman is a writer-producer who worked on Voyager and Enterprise, and he recently announced at Star Trek Las Vegas that he is developing, and I'm hopeful for the idea of a return of Jonathan Archer in a Star Trek like Federation president role. Yeah. So that's not an officially announced project, but he says like he pitched it and was rejected, and apparently it's been it's back on the table. And Scott Bakula's even spoke.
Has talked about
Bakula's even talked about it. Apparently the tentative name is Star Trek United. So that's kind of a thing that I'm really excited to follow. I would love to see Bakula back in the role. So that was kind of an interesting bit of news.
Oh yeah.
With regards to Lower Decks, the Lower Decks finale, the new Next Generation just took home the Hugo Award for Best Dramatic Presentation Short Form. That's pretty cool. We had interesting interview I saw with Simon Pegg on the other side of Star Trek, the Kelvinverse, where he announced that he and his partner writing partner Doug Young had written a sequel to Beyond called Jayla and the Wolf that would have focused on Sophia Boutella's character in Starfleet Academy. So I thought that was kind of an interesting thought. Like it would have been a spin-off in Starfleet Academy set after Star Trek Beyond, but that was it kind of didn't go anywhere. But I feel like that would have been an interesting route for that franchise to take. A couple new video games were announced: a Voyager one, a survival horror one called Star Trek Infection. Star Trek Legos were announced. That was wild. The Star Trek Con audio drama dropped first 2 episodes. Star Trek Scouts, the preschool series, started, which they're talking off air, but our 3-year-old is really into. He actually asked to watch it tonight, and there's a new episode. Aww. So that was pretty exciting. He loves the meatball one. Strange New Worlds ended season 3. We actually still have yet to watch the last 2 episodes, but season 3 has come to a close. And I believe that is all of my rapid fire Trek checks. Does anybody want to touch on any of those things?
Wow, a lot's been happening.
Right?
That's great. I hadn't heard of some of that. The Archer revival. Wow, that would be something. Be cool. And I'm sad that Jayla Starfleet Academy thing wasn't made.
Right.
Isn't it weird now that we look back on the Kelvin timeline movies and we feel this nostalgia for them? Because I remember when the Kelvin timeline movies came out and it was like, oh, this flashy new thing. And then I felt nostalgia for like the thing that preceded that, I guess the Enterprise and stuff. But now it's been almost 10 years since Star Trek Beyond.
Yeah. It's 2016. That's wild to think. Yeah. I know how I feel. Like sometimes like looking back on them, like, oh, it's almost quaint to look back to how far we've come in Star Trek, those films. Yeah. I'm a big Sophia Boutella fan. We just had a previous episode on Rebel Moon and she's a really fun actor to watch. So I think it'd been fun to see her get to develop the character more in Star Trek too. But I don't know. I guess anything's still eventually on the table, but I don't know if we'll see it.
I love that ideas are floating around and that there's like possibility, at least. I don't know.
Yeah.
There's possibilities out there. And I don't know. You know what? They made the Section 31 movie. We could do, that could be just like a similar kind of thing. Like straight to streaming movie.
Yeah. That could be cool.
We can have that now.
We can have that now. That's true.
What did you two think of the Section 31 movie?
It's a great question. It's a loaded question. I think
No, we did an episode
we
on
did a
it.
whole episode.
Oh,
It was like
sorry.
it was like over an hour and a half of an episode. That's why I say it's loaded.
I think I liked it more on a second watch.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah.
I have
think
not gathered the courage to watch it a second time.
we really struggled with it the very first time, and
Mm-hmm.
I think I thought about it a lot. And we're like, well, I got to do an episode on it, just like to digest it. And we brought in a friend of ours who's a Star Trek fan, but more like tangential to the fan base. So it was like kind of he has an outsider's perspective on it. And the second time we went through it, I think I appreciated things it was going for more than I thought the first time, even though I think it was shortchanged a lot with compressing from a series to a film and a shorter movie, not just a longer movie, but a short thing. So yeah, it was a very interesting one to dig into. Yeah.
I like that it exists on at the end of the day. I think that's where we landed, and
Yeah,
like,
it's
the
cool to
things
see
that it was
something
trying
tried.
to do.
Yeah.
And it was not without things I wish I could change, but all in
Yeah.
all, I think like it also had a lot of things going for it. I don't know. And it was just kind of fun. Like, I think if I'm just like, this is just like, again, like a story taking place in the universe and the franchise, and like everyone seems to be having fun doing it for the most part. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Seeing Michelle Yeoh back in action is always a treat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes when I'm having a bad day, I just remind myself that Michelle Yeoh's in Star Trek.
Yeah.
My day brightens instantly.
Instant cheer up. I love that.
I feel like you went through so many things. I feel like I had a couple thoughts and now I can't remember, but that's okay.
That's okay. Yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot, but it's
You've listened to the Con audio drama.
I have listened to. I've listened to the first episode. I really like it. Actually, we have George Takei, Tim Russ is back. It's got a really good cast. I was surprised because I was really not really pumped for the idea of like a Star Trek Con series, because I know Nick Meyer had been pitching that for a while, and I was like, I don't know. I feel like Con's been just done so much. But I'm surprised with like the route they're taking. It's kind of like this historical like survey or archaeological survey of City Alpha 5, and like recovering old like tapes and logs from MacGyver's, the historian character who went with Takan. And so it's like recontextualizing some things that I think are really interesting and some themes that are surprisingly deep. Yeah, so I like it. I like it so far. It's cool to hear some of those voices back, and it's I'm excited to keep following it. So, have you listened to it, Mike?
I have not, but it's on my to-do list. Yeah, I definitely want to.
So much things to watch, listen to, read all the time. It's hard to keep up.
Yeah, even just in the Star Trek realm.
Even just in the Star Trek
realm. Yeah.
But anyway, that was our Trek check.
Computer status report.
What the hell was that?
Thank you, Joe.
Yeah. So, we're here to talk about mainly 26 minutes into the episode is we're going to be talking a little bit about Lower Decks, and specifically, Mike, you brought to us the idea of talking about the Tendi Rutherford sort of situationship, maybe. I don't know. You could say it's kind of like it's a friendship, but it's they teeter occasionally, and it's really interesting. Before we like specifically talk about those two, we actually had hoped to do like a podcast just about Lower Decks after it wrapped up, and we just never got a chance to. But I think I just kind of wanted to say, when we were rewatching some episodes for this, I feel like there was just so much like joy. I felt like going back into the world of Lower Decks and
such
seeing
a balm.
And seeing those characters, I was just like, man, it's just so fun. Like it what it brought to Star Trek and what it just allowed Star Trek to be at that time is just something like so new and so fresh. Like it allowed the characters to be like us, like fans, and that's a really special thing. And it was funny, but it was sweet. It was endearing. It had heart, weird. Sweet weird, as we talk about sometimes. Yeah, it's it never felt mean spirited. Like I think that was a concern some people had when they saw the animation style, and it never felt like that at all. It was just a great thing. But I don't know. I just wanted to like say that I think Lower Decks rules. So.
Yeah. I completely agree. When you approached me to be on the podcast, I was like, what should I? Nope, definitely Lower Decks. We're going to be talking about Lower Decks because I find it so infinitely rewatchable. I just like, it's so good. And we were just talking about Section 31, right? And how, if you maybe divorce yourself from the idea of being a Star Trek fan, it's just a really cool like action movie, and it can draw in a lot of people from outside the fandom. And I feel like Lower Decks achieves that aspect as well. Like my sister and her husband watch Lower Decks. My sister obviously grew up with me, so she's very well steeped in the Star Trek lore and everything, but her husband has never seen Star Trek before. And so, but they watch it together, and Mark, her husband, just loves Lower Decks because I think humor is this like universal thing that everybody can tap into and enjoy. And you're so right. Lower Decks does the humor so well, laughing with Star Trek and not at Star Trek. And then but it's also like so good for Trekkies who have been so steeped in the lore and the fandom for very long, but just for the exact reason that you pointed out, that we're we get all the in jokes, and it's just a wonderful ride to see the characters of Lower Decks be fans of the Star Trek universe as much as we are fans of the Star Trek universe.
Yeah, you both said it really well. And I don't know, I know we could just have an entire, like, I could go on forever about how great the show is, and not, yeah, the heart also, though. I mean, like, it really, it's a laughing with Trek, but it also is like loving on it, and not just in like a fandom way, but also just like what does Starfleet really mean? And I feel like we kind of in the two of the episodes that we rewatched, I guess, for tonight, I feel like that was on display in abundance. Especially, is it the first one? I think where Boimler's like, oh, I'm not cut out for Starfleet because Mariner is running around
being a badass,
and he's just like, that this is for you. And like, it almost is speaking to the audience also, where it's like anybody can be a Trek fan, and like in the universe anybody can be in Starfleet, like if you want to, and you want to embody those ideals, and you want to explore strange new worlds and all that. Yeah, I just think that it's it somehow has it all, and it's like we're both just saying it's for the Trekkies, and it's like almost a gateway for people who are not, and like a show that everybody can love, and yeah, could go on forever. And the characters,
yeah,
fantastic, which we'll get into a couple of them.
I believe Lower Decks might be the only Star Trek that your sister really watched with us that one time, and she was like, "This was super cute," and liked it. Right?
Yeah, true. Ironically, she was younger than me, and our father passed away when we were younger, so like I got more of the Star Trek than she did, introduction, and then like it was revived when like we started dating and been together for a while. So my sister did not get the same Star Trek love that I did at the same age. Maybe someday. Yeah, see, we'll have to like have her watch more Lower Decks, and then the more we'll just slowly pull her in.
So Mike, I was looking at that new essay book that came out, The Second Star to the Right, Essays on Leadership in Star Trek, and you got one. So what I saw is specifically on Lower Decks. I haven't gotten the book. I do want to get it, but what's your just brief thesis on the mentorship in Lower Decks?
Oh my goodness. Okay. So just to back up a little bit, I was invited by these folks who I think, so it's Jason Kaufman and Aaron Peterson, and they're both professors of leadership and social science at different universities. But Jason does this podcast called Dyson Mind and invited me on board a while back. So that's how we sort of connected through the podcast sphere. And then he invited me to contribute a book chapter to this thing that you just mentioned, Joe, leadership in Star Trek. I think it's called Second Star to the Right, right?
Yeah.
And it's just a collection of essays about leadership. And I thought, what in the world can I contribute? Because this is like an academic text, it's like, and I'm an academic, but I write science papers about astrobiology and other planets and like how to use telescopes or whatever. And it's like, I don't write academic things about leadership. And so I bounced some ideas off of them, and we settled on like, what if I talked about from a very autobiographical perspective, like my experience mentoring students, and also being a student myself who's been mentored by various academics that are more senior to me, and looking at the principles that I've identified of like good mentorship through Lower Decks, specifically an episode of Lower Decks where I believe this is in the 4th season now, where our heroes have been promoted to lieutenant's junior grade, and Boimler is leading his first away mission. And
Yes,
what is it called? It's In the Cradle of Vexilon, I believe is the name of the episode. And Boimler honestly just makes all of these mistakes, and through those mistakes learns valuable lessons about leadership and mentorship as he tries to mentor these various ensigns on the journey. And there's also a really great peer mentoring aspect to it too, because he beams down not just with a bunch of ensigns that comprises a away team, but also to Lynn, who's also a lieutenant junior grade. And she sort of coaches Boimler through some of these moments. And I feel like in these moments, Boimler learns about the fact that if you're going to be a good mentor to junior officers, you need to grant them a certain degree of agency. At first, he sort of like strips away all of their responsibilities. He's just trying to do it himself. And so, but that doesn't give anybody any agency in terms of, actually contributing to the mission and deciding what aspects you're gonna do. Boimler also strips away their sense of belonging to the team, and then also their contribution. And so these are what I call the ABCs of mentorship. That when you're a mentor, you want to be able to grant your mentees a healthy dose of agency, giving them a great sense of belonging to the team and to the mission, and then also showing them that they can contribute real things. And this is really critical for me because when I was an undergrad, I remember doing my very first internship and being so afraid of the opportunity, even because I kept running through my mind like, I'm just an undergrad. What could I possibly do that the professor couldn't do in like 5 minutes, and so learning that you have the ability to contribute to the scientific enterprise is something that is just as important as learning scientific principles themselves. And I feel like that's something that I definitely try to instill in my mentees.
Cool.
Wow, really well said.
Yeah,
Actually,
I'm excited to check it out. Yeah, and just another proof that Lower Decks kind of just has
no,
it
I
all,
like
huh?
seriously do want to read that. I
Yeah.
just loved hearing that. Actually, I'm training a lot of new scientists in our lab, and so I feel like it'll be I feel like it's something I would love to have in my back of my mind, or maybe the front of my mind.
All of it.
All of it. All in my mind.
So Mike, why did you want to talk about Tendi Rutherford specifically?
Yeah, well, so Tendi and Rutherford are just such great friends throughout the entire series. And I have this like running hypothesis in my mind, maybe you share it as well, that Tendi and Rutherford are actually in love with each other, except they don't realize that they're in love with each other because they're blinded by their intense love for the USS Cerritos. Right? Both of them love the Cerritos. Both of them love science and engineering so much that they can't actually see how much they love each other. And I was one of those people who definitely wanted them to get together by the end of the 5th season. It didn't quite happen, but of course there were, certain moments where you got glimpses of like, oh, it definitely could. But even if I'm completely wrong about, in my hypothesis that they're actually in love with each other, I hope that we can also just use this episode as an opportunity to talk about the merits and the fantastic nature of just platonic friendship that they exhibit throughout the years.
Yes, thank you for putting it that way.
So when we were preparing for this, we rewatched. I made a list of a couple episodes. We watched 2 specifically. We watched season 1, episode 2, Envoys, which was primarily about Boimler and Mariner escorting the Klingon ambassador.
Yes.
But then it was also about the beginnings of the friendship between Rutherford and Tendi. And Rutherford goes through transferring to possible like other departments, right? And it's just
in order to accommodate a request that Tendi has made.
In order to try to like make sure he can make it to watch the, like, I think a pulsar with her.
Mm-hmm.
And it's I remember this episode always sticks out to me because I love the idea that he's like nervous to change, but every senior officer is just like, this is great. You're exploring who you are. Oh, it didn't work out. It's fine.
It's so
You're being
amazing.
true to yourself. It was just wonderfully Star Trek-y and geeky in the best ways.
Ugh.
But like, it really set ultimately he lands on the idea that like, I belong in engineering, but I still want to do all these things with you. And Tendi's like, well, I want to do this too. And so I want to like, they make it work in like their own way together, where he's in the tubes working and she's watching on the screen. And it's just like a really touching, like, beginning to their like longer relationship. We also watched, we'll talk a little, you can explain on a little bit more, but we also watched season 4. I want to say it was episode 6 of season 4.
I think
episode,
it is. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, episode 6. It was Parth Ferengi's Heart Place, which was, yeah, which was the one where, they have the Ferengi are joining the Federation. It was the guest star from Nog and Lita,
Ram and
Lita, excuse me, and
Max Grodenchik and Chase
Masterson.
Masterson.
And they have to go down and explore Ferenginar, and Tendi and Rutherford have to pose as a couple. And so that was kind of a really interesting one that sort of as the many seasons now of their development, like we have to see them like
try it out,
confront those feelings and try it out. Exactly. It's very interesting. So yeah, why don't we bring you in, Nicole? What did you think of?
Quite a big time jump.
I know it was a time jump, but
yeah.
No,
it was a cool, like, I mean, it wasn't season 5, but it's still kind of almost a little bit of like, the beginning is like a bookend of their relationship, right? That beginning. I love both of these episodes. I mean, we just talked about how much we love Lower Decks in general. And I already touched on what Boimler and Mariner are going through in that first season episode, or the second episode ever of the series, where it's what does it take to be in Starfleet? And Boimler's essentially got like the Hermione stuff, like the book smart, and Mariner has sort of the like the other half where she's got all the experience and a little bit of like nepotism, but we don't know that at the time. And then the Tendi and Rutherford, him literally trying on all the other uniforms and trying out, I guess trying to be somebody else, or be someone else on the ship. And like you were just talking about, like how can you contribute, as part of being like a mentor to mentees. And honestly, all of these senior officers in that episode are kind of great mentors, even if he doesn't stay in their section. And it was really cool how it was like sometimes he was really good at things, but he just didn't feel like it was where he belonged. And so then he found where he belonged back at engineering. And I guess Tendi's kind of really in the background on that one, with the exception of just sort of kind of driving Rutherford's decisions. But it's just such a delight, and it's such a great introduction to the show. I know it's the second episode, but still, it was really early on, and I was like, man, like this show really got it from it. I feel like some of the Star Trek shows, I think we all agree that they take a little bit to find their footing, and Lower Decks had it immediately out the gate, and it was consistent too, like throughout, if not like elevated as the show went on. So I think that's just so impressive, and to come back to like its beginning and reminisce on how like amazing it started and how it ended amazingly. Also, the season 4 episode, I'm trying to remember, it was like last night, but Friday's a long day. Also like wonderful. Go ahead, Mike. Sorry.
I was just going to jump in about the season 1 episode, because that was also one that I rewatched for tonight's conversation. And Nicole, I think you're so right. Like going all the way back to the beginning, rewinding it to the second episode, and then realizing, oh wow, this feels like it could have been in season 5. Right? It's just that amazing consistency of Lower Decks is astonishing, and I felt exactly what you said, and. Yeah, to me, this episode really just shows immediately how much Rutherford cares about Tendi, that he would inconvenience himself in this major way of like literally trying to switch careers to spend more time with her. I mean, that's so sweet. And then it really gives us that super sweet moment at the very end where they're sort of sitting in the Jefferies tube back to back. Tendi is admiring the pulsar on her pad, and Rutherford's like admiring, I don't know, some engineering thing in the Jefferies tube. But I guess that's when my hypothesis started to sort of like take shape, right? Because they clearly like want to spend time with each other a lot. But in the end, Rutherford realizes, after trying all these different career tracks, medical and security and et cetera, and command, and failing brilliantly at command, that he just loves engineering so much that he just wants to be in the Jefferies tubes. And so he admits to Tendi, look, I can't go watch the pulsar with you. I have to be in the Jefferies tubes. Engineering is my calling. And Tendi's like, that's okay. I'll go in the Jefferies tubes with you and I'll watch the pulsar on my pad. And this extremely sweet and tender moment between the two of them is also like, but they're not even like looking at each other. Tendi is admiring the pulsar and Rutherford's admiring the engineering work. And so it's like, wow, they really are meant for each other. And yet they cannot see it. They literally physically cannot see it because they're facing away from each other, looking at their things. And it's like, okay, these two need to eventually snap to it and realize that they're meant for each other. And yeah, so that was the genesis of my hypothesis about them being blinded by their love for the Cerritos and for science.
Definitely on Rutherford's part, yeah.
Yeah.
I watching that scene, it almost seems to me reminiscent of people who've been together a really long time, actually, where Tendi could have said, oh, we'll just catch the next one, or, oh, I'll go watch it and then we'll meet up later and hang out. And I think in real life, a lot of people tend to do that, especially if you're just starting out in a relationship. It's like, well, yep, you have our separate things and then we'll get together and do our together thing. And so to be separate but together is almost like a level of relationship way further on. I feel like we've been together a really long time, and so we'll just sit in our den and do our own separate things, and we'll just put on chill music and light a candle, and it's we're together, but mentally we're in kind of our own little world, but we're still sharing the same space, and the comfort in that. It's almost like they're already levels above first starting out in a way, this comfort, I think, that in intimacy, tenderness, that and it is intimate, right? They're only shoved in a Jefferies tube. There's not really a lot of space in there. So they are really crunched up together, and there's actually kind of an intimacy to it that is that is present to me anyway. And that, yeah, either you have to be really tight with that person, I think, in order to
Yeah, that's a great way of looking at it, that they basically skipped levels 1 through 5 and they're already at level 6 on episode 2 of the series. That's great.
Yeah, so they're a really good foundation in that that quad.
Yeah.
What do you think of that episode, Joe?
I really liked it. I think I feel like you kind of said it pretty clearly. I think that I just feel like the ending is just evident that it's like you said, it's Rutherford's trying to go out of his way to make this work, but what really is the most meaningful is just kind of them getting to be themselves together, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think in more words and more eloquently is kind of that's what you were saying, So, but yeah, that's just kind of what I took from it. I just feel like it's they are sort of blinded by their love for the ship and for Starfleet and just being geeks and science, but but they really the reason they gel so much is just because of their own personalities. And so when they're who they are at their core, it's they're just so comfortable with each other, and that's kind of nice. So
yeah, no pretense.
Yeah, exactly. No pretense. Yeah. Well said. I feel you're about to talk about the season 4 one.
Yeah, I started jumping ahead.
We didn't watch this episode, but another interesting kind of moment in their relationship is the season 1 finale with the Packleds, where Rutherford has to like sacrifice his memories to save the ship. And he's kind of like hesitant because he's like, I am going to lose my established friendship with you. Right.
Yeah. That was so sad.
That was super sad. But then there's this like moment at the end where she's like, then we get to become best friends all over again. Which is like a great, like, it's funny, but it's also like kind of touching too. And it works. Like, it totally works. There's also like later on, I think when Rutherford's trying to like reconcile his like lost memories, he like sees her as a kind of a guiding light.
Yes.
And I think that's in season 3, but like, yeah, it's just that, I mean, their relationship is just so like the foundation of it is just like such a solid piece that we see. So I don't know. I thought that was, I mean, we don't rewatch that one specifically, but I thought it was an important one to bring up too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah.
Well, on the theme of Rutherford losing his memories of Tendi, there's also the finale of season 2, where basically Rutherford is experiencing problems with his Oculus implant. There are like all these error messages that are popping up, and we find out in that episode that basically this is due to the fact that he has triple backed up every single memory that he's ever made of Tendi since the time when he lost his memory of Tendi to that. I guess it was, a season long span from, episode 1 to episode 10 of season 2. He had triple backed up his memories of Tendi because he didn't want to lose them ever again. And I think that was, that also shows how much he cares about her. And this is also the episode in which Tendi fears that Dr. Ta'ana is trying to kick her off the ship. And so she's sort of like, she's so distressed. She confides in Rutherford that I think Dr. Ta'ana is trying to transfer me off the Cerritos because I'm not good enough for medical. And Rutherford's response is, well, then let's go tour the ship one last time and go to all your favorite spots. And they go back to that Jefferies tube where they watch the pulsar. And this is a moment where you really think Rutherford is about to confess to Tendi how he feels about her. And it's Tendi is in tears, and she's saying something like, they tell you never to get too attached to your ship, because she thinks she's about to leave the Cerritos. And Rutherford is like, hey, can I tell you something? And you think he's about to say how much he loves Tendi. And instead he says, I'm in love with the Cerritos too.
God, that's right there.
and I'm just like, oh my God. Yeah, really? Like, gosh, anyway. So that's one of my favorite episodes of Lower Decks. I've watched that one probably like a dozen times. So yeah.
They really knocked it out of the park with like, I mean, the show, but the finales too. Like the epicness and the scale of it, like is so impressive. Each one. Loved it. I loved it. Yeah. So anyway, you were going to talk about the 4th season 1.
Yeah. Season 4, episode 6, with the Ferenginar.
Yes.
And the one where they are pretending to be, or are they pretending to be a couple?
Pretending to be married, at least.
They're pretending to be married. Newlyweds. That's true. Yes. That's another, it's a great episode all around. Everybody gets a little bit of something, and I actually think that for it being a Lower Decks episode, particularly Captain Freeman gets a lot.
That's right. Yeah.
Gets a light shown on her in this one, and sort of showing that she knows what she's doing. And even though the Admiral's bending over backwards for Ferengi for some reason, I really loved watching that all over again. I actually kind of had forgotten, because I don't think we'd had rewatched that, and so I was trying to remember where everything clicks into place in that storyline of the episode, and I was satisfied all over again. It was great. And then we've got Aunt Mariner dealing with her like not being able to rebel anymore because she has all the support, and like she basically has,
she rebels at not being able to rebel.
Yes. It's so ironic. And it was so funny. Quimp, her Ferengi friend, was
also in that season 2 season 1 episode. Yeah.
Season 1 episode, that second episode. And then we jumped ahead, and I was like, oh wait, that's Quimp. That's the same Ferengi.
Voiced by Tom Kenny, SpongeBob.
That was wild. But yeah, Tendi and Rutherford, and then they go through, I mean, it's like aggressive though. And then like the very funny thing that they put into the plot, that like pretending to be married to get the discount is like a felony on Ferenginar. It was such a ridiculous plot choice.
Yes.
I actually thought it was like a joke at first, and then like they kind of kept going with it, and I was like,
So good.
So yeah, okay. I mean, I think maybe this is now the place for me to like maybe suggest that like not only are they in love with the Cerritos, but like I almost in that episode I almost was wondering if like if not both of them, at least one of them may just be ace or asexual. And so like that's kind of why like maybe there are like romantic / platonic feelings, but maybe just not like sexual feelings
Interesting.
that would like prompt them to like, I mean, not that you can't be in a romantic relationship and be ace, but you know, or maybe they just like it just doesn't manifest that way for them or something. Yeah. But that was like a small thing that popped into my head while we were watching this episode, because there's a lot of like, oh, you have to eat statues of each other naked, and then they were like, oh, I want to do the lingerie photo shoot. You know, like they were okay like getting dressed into fancy outfits and being like, wow, yeah, like you look good, so do you. Yeah. So anyway, that's my like little theory from like that.
That's interesting. Yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe I'll just throw that out there and see what you guys think. But
I think that's. I mean, I think it's a really good theory. I wasn't even thinking about that, but I also think to give like credit to that theory, like when they were kind of doing like where they're being like all those jokes back and forth, or like, oh, honey, and like all those funny things. The part where they start to feel uncomfortable and start to blush is when she mentions like being topless or something, right?
Yeah.
And then they're both kind of like, oh, you know, and then they're kind of like, oh, maybe we should just go back. Like, yeah, the kind of like implied possible sexuality of it was where it started to feel a little more like, oh, this is a little okay, out of my comfort zone.
I also kind of, they had the whole thing where like they had to eat the chocolate that was like, and then say things they like about each other.
Yeah.
And I feel like we come in at the tail end of that. Or go because the chairs know whether they're lying.
Yeah.
It's so funny, but like we get like one last compliment at the end when I think Rutherford's eating his last piece or something, and it's like, I don't know, it was like, I like your eyes, or it was something very whatever, but I was like, man, I kind of wanted to hear
more of
a couple of those.
Yeah.
That would have been kind of fun. So that's like my only complaint about that like storyline, is that I feel like they cheated us out of hearing like some of those like sweet compliments, but
the genuine ones, yeah.
The genuine ones, yeah.
Right. Not I like your hair. Tendi has cool hair too, or something, whatever it was. Yeah. I think, I mean, it really just shows like at the end they have to report back to Ransom, like, how did your away mission to Ferenginar go? And they were like, yeah, that was a bad idea. We shouldn't have done that. We shouldn't have tried to pretend to be married. Like, we just don't have any natural chemistry. And then they start talking about engineering again and go back in the Jefferies tube. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, they have such good chemistry. Like, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, but I really find your hypothesis, Nicole, very plausible. Yeah, that's something that also never crossed my mind. But now that you mention it, it could very well be. Yeah.
I think when you were saying like just now, but when they start talking about the Cerritos and they jump into the tube, like they start to have the chemistry. It's like it also goes back to what we were saying about like they work the best when they're just being who they are, and like when they're trying to pretend to be the married couple, they were trying to force characters upon themselves.
Yeah,
and they were like, okay, this is just not working.
It's almost like watching those two back to back. Rutherford again trying to be like portray something like different. Someone else or be someone else. Yeah.
So I pulled a quote about this specific episode from Mike McMahon.
Really? Oh, where'd you find that?
It was a comicbook.com, I think it was, or an interview he did. It's a little bit long, not too long, but I'm going to read it because it addresses this concept specifically.
Okay.
So Mike McMahon, in relation to Tendi and Rutherford, says, quote, "I'm dying to get those two together, but if I do, it could potentially really mess up the storytelling I like to tell with them. It's a delayed gratification torture for me to be like, obviously let these two be happy and be together, but they've always been defined as they are in love because of their shared love of Starfleet and this ship. And I, right now, have a lot more stories I want to tell about them, that even though they're an amazing friend couple, I don't know if I want to take them to a couple because I don't want them to feel like they got married too young and they didn't get to have and experience the stories we wanted to tell with them. This episode is me making fun of myself for being like, be careful what you wish for if they coupled up. What would that feel like? How ill-fitting would that suit be for them? Just like you see in this episode."
Wow.
So I feel like we're
Fascinating.
on to something. I feel like a lot of the ideas we expressed are kind of similar to what he was saying a little bit too. Yeah, but I thought that was really interesting. Yeah, it's like so basically he's in the camp where he wants them to be together, but he's just like, it doesn't feel like the right moment for them because of, all the other things we want to do at that point in the show.
Yeah, it could be maybe it just takes them longer, past the time of the show that we see.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we need a Lower Decks movie or a season 6. Like, bring it back.
Yeah.
I know, I'm dying for that. God.
I know.
As we're talking about it, I don't know as we're talking about two scientists who are like really in love with their science, but like also seem to be in love with each other and like have a difficult time sort of maybe like getting to that point. I can't help but think of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Fitzsimmons. I don't know, Mike, if you ever watched that, but like, you know what I'm talking about.
I do. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., yeah.
Okay.
Back when Marvel first tried to do TV in a very different way.
Whatever. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is a banger show.
It rules. It was the best. I think it's one of the best things they've done.
And they both are kind of like a kind of shy, nerdy, shy little nerds that like, really love science and like doing science together. And like, that's when they really gel. And they actually do ultimately become a couple. Spoiler, I guess, Mike, if you ever end up watching
for
the
an older show.
Now that we've like mentioned it. Yeah, it's older. But, so I don't know. I feel like they actually did that really well in that show. But I mean, obviously, totally different shows, different vibes, and everything. But
I will say, just to piggyback off Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., I think Roxanne Dawson and Frakes have directed episodes of that show. So some
full
Trek
circle.
connections. So
in some ways, yeah. So
that's true. It's a kind of now that you say that, I don't see it too often, but like as like an idea of a character trope or something, it's a fun one. I really like it.
Yeah,
that idea of like the nerdy science friends.
Yeah, who are secretly in love with each other.
Yep.
I love it.
That is great.
That was an interesting quote to pull and to mull over. Yeah, it's interesting that they were like resisting, like it not only was the audience like, come on, but also as the writers and like kind of like a showrunner, like not quite yet, because I think in any type of show where there's a couple that's like immediately shipped like that, there is, I think, like good timing and poor timing for like getting those two together, and then you have to figure out what to do. So I don't know. It's kind of interesting to see how those always unfold. But
I found another interview with Eugene Cordero and Noelle Wells talking about the relationship a little bit, and both of them kind of talked about how they felt like the characters are. The relationship is exciting because they're able to like continually surprise each other and excite each other in different ways. Mm-hmm. But they also talked about how they were like, they both were like, "Are we going to become a couple?" But they kind of appreciated that they were able to be like friends for so long, or like demonstrate like how a healthy platonic relationship can look for a while. And then they both were kind of like, after the end, who knows, like maybe they did get together, and we can kind of think that,
that's always a possibility. It's kind of almost nice that they left the possibility that maybe they become something else, or maybe it doesn't, but that's also great because they're great as they are.
Yeah. It's the classic will they, won't they sitcom trope, but it's like the middle.
Yeah. They took the middle road.
Yeah.
Nicole, I just realized that you're wearing a TENDI t-shirt.
Yeah. And it's the one so that said science. So
science. Yeah.
I had to wear it today for this episode. I also like to try to wear like fun fingerprint or like science shirts on Fridays, just to make getting dressed easy.
Nice. Yeah. That Mike McMahon quote, I'm still mulling over myself. The way the series turned out, I don't know if they couldn't have explored any of the storylines that they did explore if Tendi and Rutherford had become a couple. It's like they probably could have, but maybe what they didn't want to do, since it seemed like they could only have 10 episodes a season, and maybe they were aware that they wouldn't get more than a 5th season, that they didn't want to they didn't want to make them a couple, because then they would have to spend some time, exploring that new kind of relationship, new dynamic between these two characters. And they just didn't want to replace any of the stories that they had already planned out with that. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. This is just more reason for a season 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Just keep going. I thought Lower Decks was one of those Star Trek series that just could go on forever.
Right. Yeah. It didn't seem like it was that expensive to make either. I don't know. It's too bad. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there's a comic series that might be continuing. Maybe there's some stuff there. I don't know. I haven't really explored the comic world of Star Trek. I know it's pretty bustling right now, but maybe they're doing some stuff.
Yeah.
Any other last like kind of thoughts about the relationship before we get into our rating scale?
I guess there was one other moment that I'll highlight just as like a really robust friendship between the two. This was from another of my favorite episodes, the second movie episode. So this is the one where Boimler tries to make a movie. So they go into the holodeck and they're exploring Boimler's movie, and Boimler ends up like getting depressed about his clone dying, and he does his own little thing, and Mariner tries to console him. So it's up to just Tendi and Rutherford to complete the actual, movie plot. And Tendi's taking the movie super seriously. Like, we've got to do this, we've got to do that, we've got to accomplish this thing. And Rutherford, knowing that this is just a holodeck day, is sort of goofing off and running to get a bag of chips, or exploring some weird side quest that involves stealing some thugs like old-timey clothes or whatever, and eventually Tendi just snaps at him. She's like, I can't believe you're not taking this seriously. And Rutherford's like, yeah, I'm not. This is like just for fun, right? And Tendi's like, no, like if I were the real captain in charge of, a real mission, you wouldn't do this, right? Because everybody who looks at me just sees an Orion, and there are no Orion leaders in Starfleet. And Rutherford's like, what are you talking about? Like, you want to be a captain in real life? And Tendi like admits to herself and to Rutherford for the first time, yes, I actually do want to be a captain. And I feel like that exchange shows like how vulnerable Tendi can be in front of Rutherford, in terms of like admitting that, yeah, actually my goal really is to be a captain. I never said that before. And then Rutherford immediately gets it, and he just, like stops goofing off. He's like, Captain Tendi, like, what are your commands? And just that he's there to support his friend in that vulnerable moment. It was really beautiful to me. So I think that was a moment for me where I was just like, these two are like excellent friends, and like that's the kind of friendship that I aspire to the friend I aspire to be, right, for other people. Yeah.
Wow, thank you for bringing that one.
That is
back.
a great moment. Yeah, I forgot about that one. That's a good one.
Yeah, Tendi was such a great character.
Yeah.
And then suddenly, when they opened up that like kind of like door to her Orion heritage and actually explored that, and she went back to Orion and was dealing with that family drama and all that stuff, and like opening up, just sort of developing the Orions as a race through Tendi was really another cool aspect of Lower Decks that maybe doesn't always get the credit it deserves there.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, our final little segment we do on this podcast, we always do a little bit of a rating of the relationship in question. And we have a 5-point scale where we start at the bottom with a red alert, which is very toxic. A yellow alert is slightly above that, not great. Fascinating is usually just as it sounds, a fascinating relationship. Resistance is futile. Oh, I mixed it up.
Whoa.
Fully functional,
Whoa.
which is a very good relationship. And then a resistance of futile is too hot to handle. So in this case, the Tendi Rutherford relationship, the will they, won't they, the middle road, where does that fall on the rating scale for you guys? Nicole, why don't you start? We usually let our guests think a little bit, so you can go last, Mike, if you want. But
okay,
what do you think?
Unless Mike's ready.
Unless you're ready and want to jump
I feel
in.
like Mike's thought about this.
Okay. All right. I'll put you on the spot.
Okay. As their friendship is just too hot to handle.
Resistance is futile.
Like they are such good friends. And like I said, just like a minute ago, I aspire to be in a friendship that is like 10% as amazing as Rutherford and Tendi's friendship. I think they're just they're just brilliant together. As a romantic relationship, I guess I would go with just fascinating.
Fascinating.
Because it's that will they, won't they, like, are they really right for each other? Perhaps one is asexual, and, so that, that's something that they would need to work out and explore. So friends, too odd to handle. Romantic relationship, fascinating.
All right. Do you want to go next?
Okay, because I'm going to piggyback on, and I loved how Mike separated them out. Like that, like the like potential like romantic aspect to it, but also just like the relationship as it stands, that as we know it. And I agree that the romantic aspect or potential is fascinating as well. I was thinking, I guess I view resistance as futile. I love the way that you interpreted it. I was thinking like, well, like, are they not like, are they resisting, or like the writers resisted? So I had them at fully functional.
I am fully functional.
Because I guess that for me, it just seems like they're like the definition of like they function so well together. I guess that's what was my interpretation. And I think sometimes I view resistance as futile as like a shooting star almost. Like it's like really hot and bright for like a moment, but does it always last necessarily? But that's just my own interpretation. So I had them at fully functional as they are, because they do have, contrary to what they said in that episode, they have such great chemistry as friends. And but yeah, fascinating to mull over the potential romantic or like, just taking that to a different level, the relationship to a different level would be fascinating, because we just don't know. I don't think it would ever fall into like a yellow alert, or red, I guess, but because I don't think either of them could really be toxic at all, but
They're too wholesome.
they're too wholesome.
Yeah.
Yes. So that's right. What's standing? What do you think, Joe?
Oh, I should have gone last because now it feels like I just had to copy you guys. I went with fully functional.
I am fully functional.
Mainly because I was kind of thinking the same way about like resistance is futile, being like they aren't quite there with like the romance element where it just seems like so hot or whatever. But I was thinking like the phrase that kept coming to mind was just like friendship goals, like kind of like what you were saying, Mike. Like that's the friendships like we aspire to have, or the friends that we aspire to be. It just seems so like just so well drawn out, so well developed over the 5 seasons, and even just like right out the gate, like it's just it's setting like a great example, and it just feels like exactly what I want from like Star Trek relationships to be. And if they aren't developing into a romantic one, just like what I want to see those friendships, as like you can have like positive, non-toxic relationships, positive friendships, particularly like across like, different races, different like, sexes, also like the differences like are part of would make them who they are, and what really make them gel with each other and stuff. Like the differences aren't stuff that they're arguing over. It's like, this is why we like each other, so it just feels like a really really great example of a great relationship that's fully functional.
Yeah.
And that's for me.
You just had it as one, then you were just like,
yeah, I didn't split them. I do like how you split it up though. I thought that was a really fun. It's really fun when we have guests come on this, because they'll think of it in a different way than we like think about it. And I always think it's really, really fascinating. We keep
fascinating.
Yeah.
No, but I think just now shout out to like all 4 or 5, if you include Talin, the main characters, is like, that's exactly why I think I love the show so much, is because they're all so different, and they'll see the exact same situation through extraordinarily different lenses. Boimler's probably worried about whether or not he's going to impress the captain, and Talin is, her logical self. Tendi and Rutherford are like these exuberant, super positive, optimistic folks, and then I don't know, Mariner probably just wants to kick something. It's like, it all works. They all work together so well. They balance each other out, and they solve things together as a team. It's just like Lower Decks has just, I don't know, that chemistry that they somehow whipped up in the writing for all of these characters is something really special. And I think if there was a series that would challenge Voyager as like my home base, it would be Lower Decks. And maybe down the road, you bring me back on in 10 years, if you're still doing this podcast and you ask me the same questions, I might say Lower Decks. as my home base, because I just love these characters so much. And it's very fresh, and I still have a lot of nostalgia for the 90s shows. But all in all, I think if I were to be real honest, Lower Decks is probably my favorite Star Trek series, and the one that if I just had to put on a random episode of Star Trek and just pick a series, it would probably be Lower Decks.
When
Awesome.
we did I put Lower Decks at the top when I
think you did, yeah.
I think I did.
When we did like a
It's
power
like
ranking a while
year or
back, yeah.
two ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were
Yeah.
like, let's just rank
Wow.
all the ones as they are right now, and Lower Decks
Yeah.
hadn't even ended yet, and I think I was already like, I just feel like it's like the best of everything.
Yeah.
I think so, yeah. I think that was it, yeah.
I'm with you, Mike.
Yeah, it's great. And I will say, hope it'd be cool. I hope we're doing this 10 years down the road, but I also hope that we get you back before 10 years. That's a long
Yeah.
ways to have you come back on. Yeah.
Sure.
We'll put
Yeah.
you in a slot maybe in a year or two instead or something.
Okay.
But thank you so much, Mike. This was like super enjoyable conversation. It was really
Yes.
nice to like officially meet you virtually, I guess. But is there any other like social media sites or like things you want to plug for people to find you?
I'm on Blue Sky, so people can find me there. My handle's MikeY, that's MIQUAI, and that, and also Strange New Worlds, a Science and Star Trek podcast. Right, almost forgot.
Awesome.
And watch for the book.
Watch for the book.
And watch for the book. Yeah,
That's 2020. That's next year, yeah, which is right around the corner now.
yeah.
2026.
February 10th, 2026.
Oh, it's really
and
right
the
around the
title
corner.
again is coming up. What is the title? Time Second Arrow. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you again, Mike, for joining us. It was a real pleasure. And thank you, everyone listening today to the episode. Remember, you can find us also on Blue Sky and Threads at DS Love Pod. So follow if you like what you're hearing. And if you really like what you hear, rate, review wherever you listen. And until next time, everybody, love long and prosper.